Welcome to chapter 19 of the book of 1 Samuel. Continues now with the story of Saul and David, their relationship. It's interesting how somebody can love one person and yet the other person can hate the person that loves them. This happens in marriage, it happens in friendship, all sorts of experiences, and this was no exception. David loved Jonathan, Saul's son, but he also loved Saul. But Saul didn't love David because he feared that David would take over the kingship, which, of course, he did later, but it was after the death of Saul. It says, and Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants to put David to death. So this is pretty bad when you hate someone this much that you want to put them to death. He had a lot of power and he could put whoever he wanted to, I suppose, to death. Reminds me of, in my lifetime, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, his two sons who were cruel and apparently could torture people to death and all sorts of horrible, hideous things. They had this power to do that. Then it begins then, it says, and Jonathan, the son of Saul, took to David exceedingly, and we mentioned that in the last chapter, their relationship. And Jonathan reported to David, saying, well, Saul, my pater, paternal comes from that, seeks to thanatose, put you to death. The thanatology is a study of death. Up here, pingilin, we have the alpha, the gamma, which generally has something to do with a report or a saying, a message. And those are all derivatives, are found in our English derivatives book. And now, be on guard tomorrow morning and hide and stay in secret. And this was what Jonathan's telling David to do, and I will come forth and stand next to my patros in the agro field. Agriculture comes from that, of whichever you should be there. And I will speak concerning you to my father. And I will see the thing, whatever might be, and I will report it to you. I guess the link didn't work for some reason. Not quite sure why these links work in one place and they don't in another. Could be up here that I have the wrong setting. Well, no tools. And Jonathan spoke good things concerning David to Saul his father. And he said to him, well, let the king not sin against his bondman David, for he sinned not against you. And his works are exceedingly proper. And he put his life in his hands and struck the Philistine. And the Lord executed a great deliverance, and all Israel beheld and rejoiced. And why do you sin against innocent blood? Hemoglobin comes from that. To put to death David without charge. And Saul hearkened to the phonis, the phone, derivative of the voice of Jonathan. And Saul swore by an oath, saying, as the Lord lives, shall he die. And the E, 1487, generally requires a negative. It's a parenthetical question. Shall he die? No. You would know by the sound of it. If you would be talking to somebody, is that gonna happen? And you're like, no. And Jonathan called David, and he reported, and there's the gamma with the alpha, to him all these things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was before him as yesterday and the third day before, as David was strumming, went back to strumming and being with him as more of a general type of a person over the military. And the war proceeded to take place, polemics, war of words, derivative. And David grew strong and waged war against the Philistines. And he struck them an exceedingly great beating, megali, the mega, and they fled from his face. So David, very successful military figure for Israel. And a ferocious spirit of the Lord came upon Saul from the Lord. Now, we saw that before, where the Spirit of God, here a ferocious spirit. I'm not exactly sure how that happens, if the Lord wants that to happen or the Lord allows that to happen. So it came upon Saul from the Lord, and he was in his house sitting, and a spear was in his hand. Now, as we mentioned before, God does harden people's hearts. He hardened Pharaoh's heart. It sounds like Saul's heart is being hardened also. And the result of that is a ferocious spirit, anti-God, hating God. As soon as you hear the word Jesus, people that hate him just come unglued. It's irrational, but yet it happens quite often. I was in a restaurant with some people that were listening to some music, and a group of people came in that were in a literary club, and the one man I knew, and he came over, and his friend, a lady friend, and she sat there right next to me, and he sat there, and then he left, and she said, well, what do you do? And I said, I'm a Bible translator. And she says, what? I don't listen to anybody that believes in that BS. And she got up and just left. Didn't want to hear it. And it continues, and David strummed with his hands, and so some type of a guitar instrument, stringed instrument. And Saul sought to strike David with a wooden spear, like he did before. And David departed from the face of Saul, so I guess he could see the anger and knew what was coming. And he struck with the spear, that is Saul, into the wall. And David withdrew. Now, whether he was sitting there and he threw it and he dodged it and went into the wall, or if he jumped up before it, we don't know, but it happened. And David escaped. He withdrew and was delivered in that nikti. Nocturnal comes from that word, night. And Saul sent messengers, and there's the alpha, gamma, gamma. The other place was report, messengers. Here, if it was from God, it would be an angel. Saul sent messengers unto the house of David to guard him, so as to put him to death in the morning. And it was reported to David by Michal, his wife, and that's in the Greek Melchol, saying, well, if you shall not preserve your life, Psikin, this night, tomorrow you, that one worked, shall be put to death. And Melchol let down David through the window, and he went forth and fled and escaped. And Melchol, I like that better than Michal, Melchol took the statues, kenotaphia, a cenotaph. Actually, I should have highlighted that word. Highlight. I don't know if it's going to work here in the green, so you can highlight it in your English derivatives book. A cenotaph is a monument generally where a person has died, but they're not buried in that place. It's a cenotaph. It's a statue of some sort, or a plaque that shows the person who they were. They had died, but they're not buried there. It gives them honor. And she put them upon the bed. The cleaning, a recline, comes from that, the clean. And a round pillow of trichone, trichinosis, a disease of the hair, of goats she put by his head, kephalis, the cephalic, and covered them with a cloak, so looking like he's in bed. And Saul sent Angelus messengers to take David. And she spoke of him to be unwell. He's coming to the door. Where's David? We've got to take him, and he's sick. And Saul sent messengers to see David. So they came back and saying, lead him upon the bed to me and put him to death. So they came back and said, well, he's sick, and so we didn't bring him. Well, then bring him with the bed. And the messengers come, and behold, there were the statues upon the bed, and a round pillow of hair of the goats by his head. And Saul said to Melchol, why thus did you mislead me and send out my enemy? Now this is his daughter. And he came through safe. And Melchol said to Saul, well, he said to me, send me, for if not, I shall put you to death. Which she didn't do. And she took it on her own to save him. And David fled and was delivered and comes to Samuel in Ramah. So he left and goes up to Ramah. Now, it has two different words. Down here it's, over here it's Ramah, and here it's Armathaim. Now, what the difference is, I don't know. But the different spellings, but generally it's Ramah. So he comes to Samuel in Armathaim, and Apangilia reports. There's another Alpha Gamma Gamma. To him, it's not a messenger, but he reports to him all as much as Saul did to him. And Samuel and David went and stayed in Navath, in Ramah, excuse me. And this is where Samuel stayed most of the time. And it was reported to Saul, saying, behold, David is in Naboth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And coming, they saw the ecclesian, that's the assembly in the New Testament. King James called it a church, but it's really an assembly of the prophets. So whenever people are assembling for Christ, his assembly is, it's not a building, it's an assembly of people. And here, assembly of propheton, transliteration into prophets. And they were prophetevon ton, prophesying. And Samuel stood ordained over them. He was the head of them. And the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul. And they prophesied. Now, exactly what these prophecies were, how they did it, it doesn't say. Somehow it was a manifestation that could be seen and heard, probably, of God's Spirit coming upon a person. And people could tell that this is something of God. Maybe they spoke certain things and praised God. And it was reported to Saul. And he sent other messengers, hetero, other angels and messengers, and they prophesied. Now, that one doesn't have the link. And they prophesied. And Saul proceeded to send messengers a third time. Tritus, try. Gives you a hint that it's third. And they prophesied, even they. So 3 groups of men. It reminds me of, it was either Elisha or Elijah, where I think it was Elijah, I think it was Elisha, where King, I think it was Ahab, sent men to take Elijah, and they were killed, the first group, by God with a fire or something, and then they came a second time, and they were devoured. And then finally the third ones were sent, and they came and got down on their knees and begged Elijah or Elisha to have mercy upon them, and they have children and a family. Don't kill us. We're just told to do this. So this reminds me here that Saul's sending these out the third time. And Saul was enraged in anger and went, even himself, unto, now here's that Armathaim again. And he comes unto well of the threshing floor in Seki, some type of a well. And he asked and said, where are Samuel and David? And they said, behold, in Navath in Ramah. And he went from there into Navath in Ramah. And there came upon him Pneumatheu, Spirit of God. Now, it wasn't the ferocious spirit, just as the Spirit of God. And he went going and prophesied unto his coming unto Naboth in Ramah. So he begins to prophesy also as the other ones. God has control of people in their prophesying, and even if a person is against somebody doing bad, God can even use them in a way. I'm sure that there have been times when God has used people that were going to do harm to another person, but yet God had mercy on the other person and somehow took over the psyche of the person who wanted to do harm to the enemy or whoever he wanted to harm. And God could take over and change that person's heart if he wants to. And this is proof right here. And Saul took off his clothes. This is kind of weird. And he prophesied before Samuel. So Samuel knew him, and so here now he's prophesying, and he fell naked that entire day and that entire night. Now, the prophets and men being naked among each other is not unusual, because like fishermen, they fished in boats, and Peter was naked when he was fishing, because when he went in, he bound him, wrapped, it says he was naked, and in other places they wrestled naked, and men did things like that. And so they were there prophesying all day and the night. And people knowing this or seeing it, they said, because of this, they say, is also Saul among the prophets? Which apparently became a saying by a lot of the people about Saul. Whenever they saw Saul or heard about him, they would say, is Saul also among the prophets? So now what happens next, apparently Saul left, but yet we'll find out exactly what happens in chapter 20 and how this relationship between David and Jonathan develops, and between Saul, who eventually seeks David's life by sending people out to find him and to kill him, and how things turn around very easily when God is in control. Hope you'll join us in chapter 20. Exciting things. Till then, God bless.